welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for A Street Cat Named Sylvester. And with me today to watch this musical, no, not really, I mean, I'll explain the title in a moment, he's my good friend Essie McPeter. Say hi.
Hello.
So, just a few bits of info to get underway with this one. So as mentioned, this is A Street Cat Named Sylvester, released on the 5th of September 1953. It's the 689th in the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. There's no physical media release for this one yet at the time of this recording. A HD version is out there. There was a previous SD version that was released in Japan, but that one is full of errors, I think DVNR, that kind of thing. So what you're seeing here is pretty good, with one notable exception that we will get into later on. So, in case you haven't seen this one, it's under copyright, can't show you the full thing here, otherwise the video will just get blocked. But in case you haven't seen this one, Tweety has no home and he is freezing, so he ends up being, well, blown to a home where he is caught by Sylvester. Sylvester brings him in, and for the rest of the short, he tries to hide Tweety from Granny, while at the same time avoiding the attacks of a bedridden Hector the Bulldog. So, it's a pretty good one, I'd say, and we'll definitely go through it. Firstly though, a few bits of trivia. The title itself comes from a play, which was then made into a film starring famously Marlon Brando called A Streetcar Named Desire. It was then adapted into an obscure musical that was performed only once on The Simpsons. Yeah, actually, that's how I discovered it, by the way. I discovered it first on The Simpsons and then went back and I watched the Marlon Brando film. And it's all great, but I can tell you now, the controversy regarding The Simpsons version and the city of New Orleans, hilarious stuff. You gotta take a look at that if you can. And yeah, as always, the title has nothing to do with the short whatsoever. It's just a play on the title and that's it.
Besides, he isn't even a street cat in this one.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work in that way, but whatever. You know, as long as the short's funny, I guess. So in this short, Hector has yellow fur for some reason, as opposed to the usual grey, although Spike the Bulldog has grey, so I guess we're going to now build up the entire Egghead versus Elmer Fudd controversy that seems to pop up a lot. So we've got here the Hector versus Spike controversy as to what dogs. Honestly, guys, they didn't care. It's like, we need a bulldog. Do you remember the bulldog's name?
Yeah.
Who cares? Just put a bulldog in. What's his name?
Like
Hector.
the fact that MGM, Spike, and Butch swapped names at some point.
Yeah, who cares? But yeah, it's another controversy. Ooh, the fandom is going to go nuts. Now, unusually in this short, Granny is actually not aware of Tweety's existence, because in a lot of the shorts where you have Granny, she owns Tweety, or at least is about to own Tweety or whatever. Here, she only owns Sylvester and Hector, and that's it. So, gotta give them credit. They've got the Sylvester and Tweety formula down in terms of the two main characters, but they change things up quite a bit from short to short, and I know eventually they'll stop with that, but at this point in time, there's at least enough variety that they end up doing. Now, the opening of this short is actually quite similar to the short Tweety Pie, where you got the whole Tweety warming his hands, he's all cold and all that. Nothing wrong with it, but it definitely did remind me of Tweety Pie. And lastly, Tweety mentions at the beginning, outside. And that's a reference to the hit song that was popularized in the 1949 film Neptune's Daughter. It was around earlier, but that's where the song became a huge hit.
Never heard of the song myself.
No, I mean, don't ask me to sing it, but if you hear it, you will know it, I would say. It was controversial a few years ago. I remember there was a big deal over the lyrics of it, but anyway, if you hear it, I'm sure you'll be like, oh, it's that song.
Is it like New Orleans?
No, not the Simpsons song. That's hilarious. The one where they're describing New Orleans as this stinky, rotten town and all that, and the city itself objected to it. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Simpsons. We're here to talk about this one, and you picked this one to do.
I think it's a pretty good one. I honestly am not very familiar with it. I just thought it would be a fun one because it's a bit of an odd one and because of the technical issues surrounding it that we'll discuss in a little bit.
And I actually hadn't seen this one before. Maybe I have, but I don't recall it at all. So in watching it, I'm like, okay, it's similar to the opening of Tweety Pie, as I mentioned. It's also got elements later on where you got the injured bulldog, and Friz would revisit that idea.
He did it better the second time.
Yeah. And in that short, I think Friz must have remembered it, or these writer must have remembered it, going, okay, let's revisit it. And sure enough, it's a good idea. But look, it works here as well, because we get a wonderful running joke. But let's take a look at this short from the start. Right away with the title cards, I've got to say, I do like the title card with all those cats. It's just a nice little design. It doesn't add anything in terms of the story. There's only one cat in this whole short anyway, but nice. I just like it for some reason. So, as we mentioned, Tweety's all cold. He is warming his hands, and he ends up getting blown to the front door of where Sylvester lives. So he knocks on the door, wanting to get warmed, and we get a nice little play on the whole Atora Putty Tat, which was very much in the pop culture by this point. And I noticed that in each short that we always get a variation of it. So in Tom Tom Tomcat, you had the Sylvester variant or whatever it is, doing the whole smoke signal that says Tweety Bird. Here you see Sylvester and Tweety doing against each other, and Catty Cornered, which we're actually going to be reviewing after this one, funnily enough. It has a variation on that as well.
See me then.
Suffering success. I thought I tore a Tweety Bird.
I thought I tore a putty cat.
I did tore a Tweety Bird.
I did tore a putty cat.
Nice to see that they like to mix things up, and the audiences would have gotten a kick out of it at the time. So Sylvester then grabs Tweety and licks him like an ice cream cone, decides, yep, I want to eat this Tweety Bird, when Granny appears. And when Granny appears, we hear a famous song play in the background every time she's there. So it's like become her theme song in this short somewhat.
Yeah, I noticed that they kept using that one theme.
Oh, there you are, Sylvester. It's time for your dinner. Oh, you must be starved, Kitty. Oh, that leg again.
Oh, no.
Here, you try Hector's medicine. That'll make you feel better.
I've seen things saying Stalin wasn't heavy on themes, but when there were certain things going on, you know what Stalin was going to, especially for an old lady like Granny.
Exactly, and given that in Hair Trim she would have been probably 105 years old or something, given that she mentions Gettysburg there, the song is even older than that. So how old is she? Who knows, but she's old.
Lady secret.
Exactly. So, never ask a lady how old she is. So Sylvester hides Tweety in a vase with 2 books, and we see that Granny's very generous with the food portions. I definitely don't feed my cat that much. Maybe that's why he complains a lot, but anyway. So I do have to wonder what sort of cat food it is, but anyway, he's, nah, I got something better, but then he breaks the fourth wall to us, the audience, like, yes, I got something a lot better than this one. And we see Hector, who apparently was injured after chasing Sylvester prior to this. So, okay, sure. So that's a nice little setup there. Because Warren Foster was really good at setting up story, I think.
Yeah, Foster wasn't necessarily a gag man, although he did funny cartoons. Because the directors could do funny gags with him. He certainly was very good with setting up a story that had a lot of depth and also was bound to have a steady supply of gag, like this one.
Exactly. And that brings up the fact that we're going to get a nice little running gag involving, well, actually 2 running gags. One is how many times this poor dog's going to get hurt by Sylvester. Mm-hmm. And we hear this scream and all that, which I'll know you want to discuss in a moment. And the medicine gag. So Granny, she's wondering, why are there books on this vase? And Sylvester's first thought is, of course, let's hit this dog's cast. And we hear this yelp.
Now, what are those books doing on that vase?
I mean, apparently we hear that yelp in other media.
I think it might have actually originated from Snow Business, possibly. I think Sylvester might have used it, but it must have ended up as like a stock library sound effect because you hear it in the Pink Panther. That was a remake of the Sylvester and Tweety remake of this one, oddly enough. And then in Super Mario 64 prototypes, if you ever see videos of it, they use a high-pitched version of it. It's not his usual voice, Charles Martinet. It's Mel Blanc pitched up, which is pretty interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they were just putting it in as, again, stock. It just ended up in the library, although you do have to wonder with the whole stock situation, did Mel Blanc ever know that it became like a stock sound? And if so, was he paid for it? And I just think it's interesting.
I'd assume it would be Trade Brown, considering that'd be his library.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, but it's a great yelp nonetheless. So we start off with this medicine, and you do have to wonder what's in this medicine. So the first part we see this is, it's funny enough, the dog gets the medicine and the dog absolutely hates it and literally turns green.
That leg feel better in a jiffy.
But in watching this short for the first time, what made me laugh out loud was just the fact that Sylvester returns to the vase, puts his hand in, and he pulls out dynamite. And I'm thinking, what on earth? It's like a Tex Avery type gag. And Tweety was already out anyway. I just thought that was great. It's just, that took me off guard. I didn't expect that, if I'm being honest. I thought he might have just grabbed him and something else would have happened. So, yeah, kudos to Freely and Foster for that one.
What you got in the vase, putty cat?
I like how willing Tweety is just to stay in the house, even with Sylvester chasing him, just to stay out of the cold.
Well, I can't blame him. I mean, that blizzard looked pretty
Yeah.
bad in the beginning, so...
We had a few weeks like that here.
Yeah, well, we don't get that here at all, unless you go up in the mountains. So then we see a bit of a chase, and I like how Hector bites Sylvester in the butt, you hear a yelp, and Sylvester just casually hits Hector's leg again. Just so much animal cruelty in this one.
Is that you again, Hector?
It almost reminded me of the barnyard dog Hector in this one, because he's kept in this place. He can't chase Sylvester beyond just trying to lunge at him through his seat, similar to how barnyard dog can only go so far on his rope, and he gets smacked silly when he reaches the end. It almost plays like Foghorn Leghorn, and Warren Foster worked on the early Foghorn, so I guess he was just edging a bit towards that, I suppose. It worked very well. It's good comedy to have a character who just can't do anything, and yet he really wants to get this character.
Exactly, and what they tell you sometimes when it comes to writing, write what you know, and sure enough, yeah, as you say, he worked on the Foghorns, and he's obviously reusing that same idea here, which is great.
Yeah, that whole barking dog.
Exactly, and we got repeated animation again. Like, we're going to see Granny feeding this medicine a few times. They reuse that animation in this short, which makes sense. I'm not saying.
I love that he puts Tweety in Hector's mouth in one of them, and Tweety has to take that medicine.
Yep, so again, I got to wonder what's in that medicine.
Castor oil.
Maybe. So we then see a plunger joke, and what is it with Greeling and plunger jokes all of a sudden? Because we saw it in gift wrap, but then we saw it again in Tom Tom Tomcat with literal repeated animation from it. And now we see the same idea here, although at least they added something new here, which is when the plunger gets flung and we get that beautiful animation, which would be great to slow-mo.
I guess it was a quick, cheap gag that I first thought was funny at the time. And I guess he thought it was something that was just a household item you could use, which is, I'm sure, why it was used, because, again, it was something that audiences would be familiar with at this point.
Exactly. And, again, we get the medicine once again and the repeated animation, but, hey, it's funny because it's going to set up something towards the end, which is fantastic. So, Tweety is looking around for another hiding spot. He thinks, oh yeah, I'll hide in here where all the wool is. And Sylvester sees Tweety, goes in, but he doesn't realize Tweety has already escaped. And Granny, she really needs to get that knitting done, so she sits down and starts knitting, and you all know where this is going to go, where with Sylvester's fur being used as part of her knitting. But I'm going to say, Sylvester is a great knitter. He's doing it the other way around, and he ends up knitting the other stuff, and she tries to do the punchline.
Stigmatism.
Stigmatism.
I love the great cartoon logic that his stuff can come off, but yet when he reknits it, it's all just mostly what Granny was knitting.
Exactly. But that whole, stigmatism, I thought, okay, that's kind of a weird thing, but
this is also the part of the short where it looks like we're looking through Granny's glasses now.
We're starting to get now some bits which look rather soft, because this restoration looks very sharp for the most part, but then we get a few bits that become rather soft. I mean, what do you think happened here?
Yeah, the last third has a bunch of scenes, not all of them. I would say a majority of them where they look very soft. I looked at older copies. This is an issue on the DVD and recordings where the old VHS recording from, I think, the Bugs Bunny show I was looking at. It looks like they were trying to use a secondary source, or at least tweaking it a little bit to just be that a little bit sharper, but this appears to be a day one issue. Perhaps the camera was out of focus when they were filming. I honestly couldn't tell you, but it's also possible, sadly, that it may have gone to vinegar syndrome where safety film deteriorates, but that seems too unlikely to me, especially since I would think they'd have a backup. So I'm going to have to take the guess that it's a camera issue, and that, again, it was a day one issue.
Probably. So I'll be curious when this one hopefully makes its way on a collector's choice set, because I don't see why it wouldn't. It's actually a really safe and a really funny one. Will they maybe revisit that part or maybe just leave it as it is because it's probably just baked into it? Because you could technically go back and fix it frame by frame, but then how revisionist do you want to get? You know what I mean? If it was always there, do we want to fix it?
Certainly want to make it a bit more appealing, I would say.
Yeah, maybe try and enhance as much as possible, but not to the point where it's completely revisionist. But anyway, let me know, guys, in the comments what you think they should do. Should they just leave it as it is, or should they at least attempt to fix it further? So we got the whole thing setting up the third act where Tweety's saying to Hector, oh, the Putty Tat's trying to get me, and we'll have the whole line,
He'll have to get you over my dead body. Okay, Buster, I can arrange that.
he'll have to get to you over my dead body. And Sylvester's like, okay, we can arrange that. Just his delivery.
This also reminded me of Foghorn, where, again, the Barner dog is always willing to help anyone messing with Foghorn.
Exactly. And in one bit, which I thought was pretty funny, just the way it was done, is that whole fridge scene, which, again, it's another soft-looking scene. But you do have to wonder how strong Sylvester is, because those old fridges were mainly metal, or ice boxes, whatever you want to call them. So even though he's using a pulley here, which would have distributed some of the weight, so to speak, wow, he's a pretty strong cat, I must say, because those things certainly weren't light.
He could have been rowing on one of those Viking ships.
Exactly, just wow. And of course, there's this build-up where Hector thinks he's going to get crushed, but no, Sylvester ends up getting crushed, which leads to the payoff, where now it's Sylvester that's injured as well, and we get the beautiful, the absolutely beautiful delivery by Mel Blanc.
Shut up!
So we get that payoff, as I mentioned, with old medicine bit, where you do have to wonder what on earth Tweety mixed in the medicine, because I felt that would have paid off a little better if you saw maybe some labels of the bottles he was using, which had some weird stuff, maybe, I don't know, nitroglycerin or whatever stuff, right?
Knowing these cartoons, they probably put alum or whatnot in there.
Exactly. So they could have had something a little different. And
I love the dark implication at the end by Tweety. That Putty Cat's gonna be in an awful lot of trouble when the medicine starts working.
so it would have been probably a little better if they showed the labels of all sorts of really bad stuff going in his body, and then we could have ended there. But it's okay. Still funny.
Yeah.
It's just, I felt that could have been a little bit stronger if they did that, but whatever.
It's a good one. It's a nice one that diverged from the norm. We always had the extra thing thrown in that made it a bit more special. And a lot of them do focus just on Sylvester's antics, but the stuff between Hector and Sylvester kind of proved that Sylvester was a funnier character when he was going against any other character but Tweety.
Yeah, and I like the fact that in this short, and with the whole Sylvester Tweeties around this time, at least until I think the shutdown or thereabouts, there's at least enough variety in each and every one. So you got the core thing with Sylvester and Tweety as the main characters, and we know who they are, what they do, and so on. And yet, each one is different enough that there's no continuity or anything. You can just watch any one of them. Doesn't matter. They're still pretty solid, although we'll soon start seeing more remakes and that sort of stuff after the shutdown is done.
I think after the shutdown, the Tweeties became a lot more autopilot. There are some very good ones, particularly the ones that don't focus on Tweety, of course, because Sylvester was a strong character on his own, but you get the impression they were focusing more on the Speedy Gonzales or the other Sylvester entries with Freeling.
Exactly. So as for a rating, this one gets 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this one. It may not become a go too short for me, but it's funny enough that, hey, if it's on, I'll watch it. And again, I hope it's on a collector's choice so I can watch it yet again.
I'm going to give it a nice 8. It's a very good cartoon. It isn't necessarily one of the defining examples of the Sylvester and Tweety series, at least for me. Its remake, again, as we said, Greedy for Tweety, is the better cartoon. But it is a very funny short. It's diverse enough, and it has a steady amount of gags, just not the cream of the crop for Tweety, but still a good short that isn't on autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you on that one. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
That's all, folks.
Here, you try Hector's medicine. That'll make you feel better. That Putty Cat's gonna be in an awful predicament when that medicine starts to work.